My name's Leigh Ewin. I'm a breathwork educator and facilitator, and I love breathwork. I've been diving down into the worlds of breathwork. I've been consuming everything I can get my hands upon, and of course, like the segue into my cold adventures, I'm running Cold Exposure Finland and facilitating and guiding retreats, especially where people are coming here to experience cold in Finland, and that culminates in the ice diving experience, so taking people under the ice. And of course, that sort of like there's a cross intersection there with the nervous system and mind-body connection and all that jazz. So that's where I operate in that field.
Perfect. And being a pioneer in the world of breathwork and cold exposure, can you take us back to the moment where this journey really started for you? Not the polished bio version, but the this changed everything moment. I'm sure you have one.
Oh yeah, easy. Like at the time, I was like really into, like, I'm an athlete, wannabe athlete, as most of us guys want to be, or say we are, or whatever you want to say. So somehow biohacking as a concept, if you've heard of it, I'm sure, that was the thing. That was the way that I could, as a bit more of an adult, sort of like apply myself into these practices and sort of like take care of myself. And like any normal kind of guy, we're like active guys. If we feel something, if we're stressed or whatever, we just sort of like mobilize and activate. And I was just in this mode of trying to meditate, actually, like someone said, "Hey, have you tried meditating?" Well, yeah, I've tried it, but I'm quite rubbish at it, to be honest, at that time. So there I was on the good old YouTube, and there was some really grainy old footage of a fellow called Wim Hof with a couple of Dutch guys, super old school kind of stuff, a couple of tracksuits, really, like no good cameras, looks, pretty mangy looking and stuff. But then he was practicing this breath work, right? And, these guys that were practicing that were like, this is really good, and so on. And I tried to do it myself, and I didn't quite understand it. And then more and more people were a little bit like talking about breathing and breath work. And then I don't know, like how like it took a while, actually. I would say that part of the adventure was 2 or 3 months at least. But there was just one day where I just said, you know what, I know the technique. Like, I kind of wrote it down on a piece of paper. I think I understand how it works. And without Wim's voice, like, I love the guy, but without his like, all the way in, and how he talks, all that sort of stuff, without all that, I'm just going to like put myself in a little cocoon and put my headphones on, put some music on, and just stick to this sort of like process. And oh my God, like, I saw the flashes, I got super emotional. I was like, what's going on? And it just felt freaking great. So at that exact moment, I said, I want to learn more about this, and I want to learn this. I want to teach people this. I want to help people experience what I'm feeling right now, because this is bliss, And the preamble towards that is that I've been practicing cold since like 2011 here in Finland. So in a way, that sort of cross intersection made a lot of sense. Like I was enjoying the cold. It was part of who I am here in Finland. It was my initiation here. Mm-hmm. And it just, like, with the breathing from Wim Hof and the cold, it sort of collided. I was like, yeah, this could be something here.
So you started with the cold prior to learning about the breathwork, as you mentioned.
Yep.
Of course, being in Finland.
That was, yeah, I mean, like, I'm an Aussie. I've been living in Australia all my life, except for the year prior to moving to Finland. I was living in London, mm-hmm. and I met a Finnish woman there. So that's how I ended up here. As we say, came for love, stayed for the weather, as I'm always saying. Just like every other expat here, I guess. Not. But yeah, it was like a rite of passage, like you got to come to grips with the cold some way. So I was like, I'm not a skier. I don't like all that. I didn't really have all the gear for all that stuff. In fact, it was more sort of like out of necessity that I went and, like my colleagues basically forced me to do that. They forced me to go to the cold and all that. And And I'm like, are you serious? You can't go in there. You'll die, or something's bad's going to happen, or whatever. And they wanted me to look uncomfortable in there. There I was, kind of bit of a muscular guy, looking a bit bigger and all that than what I am today. And they wanted to see me struggle a little bit, which I did. They took the video of the thing as well, which, came back to haunt me for the next 3 or 4 months after. And then the next year, the same thing happened again at the Christmas party, the staff Christmas party. The whole team was like, yeah, we're going to go and get a cottage. There's going to be sauna again. And then they didn't mention the cold water, but I kind of had this thing in my back of my head of last year that sucked. That was like, I hope they don't do it again. And sure enough, there we were right at the end of the night after a couple of beers and all that sort of stuff. I had it was the staff Christmas party that, Finns like to drink booze at the best of times. So there I was going into the water again. Lasted a little bit longer than the year before. And they had another video of it, thankfully a bit longer video. And then it was, a few months before the Christmas party, September, October or something like that. I basically said, you know what, it's not going to happen this year. I'm going to prove them wrong. I went to the Baltic Sea, started going to the cold, not every day, but at least every second, third day, and never told anyone about it. Probably in hindsight or retrospect, I wouldn't advise that for anyone now. Because you're there by yourself. You're an Australian basically who's just trying to figure it out for himself. And I remember the first morning when there was like a little bit of thin layer of ice there, and I was like, oh, okay, so the ice comes here too. That's cool. And I even, to be honest, I had no idea about ice at all. So that when I was walking out, a thin layer of ice, you can kind of push it with your legs and just pushing out as you're walking out there from the shore. And everything went well. I did the cold. And then I remember when, I was warming up again, my shins were just bleeding. So the ice was like really sharp and everything. Like I learned everything probably the hard way. But long story short, by the time the Christmas party came, I was almost like,
you're the man.
Are we going to do the cold, guys? Is it happening again this year? Sort of like, please, I'm ready for it this time. And there it was. I went in, the guys had the video, and I went in, and this time it was easy, a few minutes or something. And I put a solid session in to kind of like, just to prove that I can do it now. And I got to see in their eyes, I got to see that they were like, oh shit, I got to beat the Aussie now. So it was like a proud moment, but it's sort of so different to how I'm doing it now. That was all about like kind of a little bit like even middle fingers to everyone else. Like I'm going to do it to spite you guys or to show you or whatever, or to sort of arrive here in Finland. And nowadays it's, to have those breakthroughs and to have the people to maybe even heal things or treat things. So
nice. And we'll come to that in a moment, actually. And you, in the podcast and the interviews that I've seen of yourself, you often talk about resilience and regulation through breath and cold. What are some of the misconceptions that people have when they first approach this kind of work? And how do you guide them through your perspective and experience that you just started to share?
It's so different. It's changed a lot, right? Since when I started to do it, I was just doing it because it felt good, right? For me, the sort of like continuation of what we just sort of left off on is like I after that Christmas party I was like, hey, I'm done, I ticked the boxes, got the cool video of me doing it, got that good feeling inside, and then like a week passes and I kind of like felt a little bit like mopey, or like there was a bit like so like I don't know, like I feel a bit not good and not at ease or something. And then a few more days pass. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to just go back. I'm going to go back to the sea. And I went in and I felt good again, So I was like, okay, this is here to stay. This is part of me now. This is part of my, it's just part of who I am. But then also like there was no mistaking that I actually literally felt better after it. My mood and, me as a person, like how much energy I had, for example. You got to remember this is around about Christmas time in the in Finland, where you may get 5-6 hours of daylight, and if it's snowing, it's not very light anyway. So
What
we
is the
do have
temperature there?
the temperature. It can like today, the temperature, or like in winter.
Winter.
Winter it can go. I think the most we've had here is -33 in the southern parts of Finland.
Wow.
But of course, if you go north, 40, -40, whatever up there. So needless to say, I mean, that was way colder than I've ever experienced ever before. Even like -5 outside is the coldest I've ever experienced. But I felt good. That kind of led me to understand like why I felt good, what was happening inside the body. Like the cold in general is something that, like, it's kind of a love or hate thing at this point, right? Like, a lot of people really hate the cold. If you accidentally have a cold shower, when sometimes you just put the shower on and you're kind of like, okay, now it's probably warm enough or whatever, and you go in, it's like, and people hate that. People absolutely despise that. They want to avoid that at all costs, but then again, you want to avoid a lot of discomfort, right? We're kind of built in this way. The nervous system is constantly trying to steer clear of any of those things that would kind of get a rise or raise out of us in any single way. And obviously that's all geared and designed to running on efficiency, right? The body doesn't want to produce any more cells, anything more than it has to, right? In order to survive. And in fact, if you really think about it, like if you wake up out of the bed in the morning, and if you really listen to the body, if you would really listen and kind of act upon those signals in the body, blood pressure increase, cortisol raise, a bit of adrenaline, pupils dilate, looking around, and it's just your alarm going off. It's not a saber-toothed tiger in the background or anything like that. Like, if you really listen to all those signals, you'd actually just be in bed, right? So when people are going to the cold, for example, it's just an elevated state of that, right? It's kind of the same thing, but just obviously it's a much more sort of blunt, sensation in the body, or a series of sensations. Your nervous system saying, okay, you're in the cold, get the hell out of here, And there we are, huffing and puffing away, breathing and acting like we don't want to be there. So in a way, like, the misconception of like is there to, when we say listen to the body, people also say, like many instructors and people that are facilitating sessions, they're also very much saying that, hey, you should get out when you feel good. Like, what does that mean actually? Because in some ways, if you stay in there in a cold plunge or ice bath or whatever for 3 to 5 minutes or something like that, in many cases, even if it's the first time for the person, there is that raise in adrenaline. There is that, in a way, like that sort of moment where you're like, hey, this is actually not so bad, when you're like, we've all been there, right? When we're sitting there. So, and then it's like, no, but this feels good too, to be in. So like, when people are saying, hey, you should always get out when you feel good, what does that mean? And it's very, very subjective. So those kind of pieces of advice are like, they're interesting to me. And in many ways, going there, like, if you go, I have gone for some years, I've gone every single day, right? Like every single day. As soon as the weather cools down, I don't much like it when it's too warm, actually. And the Baltic Sea is not like the cleanest body of water in the summer, because the temperature increases, and it doesn't have a very good, it doesn't have a huge mouth. So it's not like this huge flow of water. In actual fact, probably one of the only things that keeps the Baltic Sea clean enough, or is the fact that it goes so cold, because nothing can survive in there. So it kind of gives it this reset, like the seasons anyway. If you go like 365 days in the year, for example, the chances are, like, at least half of those days you're kind of like dragging yourself there. That's just how it is sometimes, especially if you're doing that before work, especially if all you've had is a drink of water, and you're just like, all right, let's go, and you still got the bags under the eyes and all that. So going when you feel good, where does that kind of factor in? And then also, like, listening to your body. Like, if you wake up in the morning and you're super tired, some of us don't have the choice to be like, you know what, like, forget it. Like, I'm going to listen to myself. I'm going to stay in bed. So that the whole nervous system, and like fundamentally what I'm talking about is like the body mind connection. And listening to yourself. You're hearing people always say, just listen to what feels right for you. So yeah, that's one of the biggest seesawing things about cold in general, because the nervous system, there's so much content about it nowadays to really listen to that. But on what level, you know what I mean? And yeah,
It's
it was
interesting.
maybe that turned into somewhat of a bit ranty in a way, because like I'm trying to give people in the work that I do. I'm not a military. I'm certainly, like, I learned from my Wim Hof experience, right? I'm not a Jocko Willink guy where it's like everything sucks good or anything like this, but there are certainly elements of that. And when I'm with other people, of course, you know, as any good coach or facilitator can identify, there's horses for courses, right? So different people need different motivation. Sometimes it's the carrot, a little bit a stick in some ways as well. But for my own self, you know, I take more sort of the hard edge, I would say, like more like, you know, effort, let's go. You know, you're going to go, that it's good, you know, it's going to feel good, or maybe it doesn't, but we're going to go anyway.
Nice. It's a very good perspective, and one that I can resonate with quite a bit on many levels, actually. And I'm glad that you touched on these, because you're right, because there's many influencers that are speaking about this but not necessarily giving an explanation behind it, or it's either black and white mentality.
Yeah, it's and you know, like even with all of the research and things, like we're still relatively early stage with the cold, you know, like we're still really trying to figure it out. It's still like a, you know, people are still referring to studies with mice when we're talking about the synapses, which is the way that the neurons connect and strengthen with cold. You know, that's been shown in rodents, but you know, we're assuming that that's also the same in humans. And then we have like the way that studies are anyway. When we try and figure out like the perfect dose of the cold, Susanna Schuberg is talking about this 11 minutes as a sort of principle, thanks to Andrew Huberman, who's on the board of her company, by the way, if people know that or not. So that's quite handy. But he had given her this, you know, on the podcast, like, hey, it's the Schuberg principle, where in her study, what was found in that study of the members would go to, on average, it was about 11 minutes of cold exposure per week. And like we would, in some days, we'd get that done handily on one day. And so in a study that works, you know, like we're always referring to that particular study. And then we kind of like give that as an example to people of how to kind of, you know, that's the measuring stick. But ultimately it's up to the individual too, right? It's all up to us. And sometimes it's very, very valuable to listen to yourself. Sometimes it's very valuable to push a little bit too, you know?
I agree. Because you always get confused, or a paradox of, if you, as you quite rightly said, 11 minutes per week, I think it was, or something like that, or 3 to 4 times when you're talking of sauna, there's something different that they made mention. And ultimately, when I'm in a sauna or ice, but I sometimes want to stay a bit longer, just for various reasons.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
So you've kind of alluded to it, but our next question, what's one or several unconventional or overlooked practices, something simple but powerful, that you believe everyone should integrate into their recovery or daily routine? It seems that ice has become somewhat your daily routine.
Yeah, I mean, like at this point, it's almost like, it feels like almost a void thing to say, like, you know, just the basics, you know, those the free things, you know, like fasting, you learn so much about yourself. Cold exposure, you learn so much yourself. Sauna is kind of like this cozy, comfy gift to yourself in a way, right? Breathwork, any breathwork practice in general is something nice as well. And I think most people that are somewhat health conscious are at least doing some resistance training and or / cardio, obviously in an ideal world, both of those things. So I won't be boring and talk about any of those, because I think unless you really want to, but like I would just say like breath holding breath. I think that there's like a huge amount of value in that a lot of people, you know, and that raises a lot of questions in itself, right? Breath holding is a, you know, scary thing or whatever. But in actual fact, like I can give you an example, right? So at one of our retreats, when I'm doing these ice diving retreats, they're not necessarily, it's not a free diving camp or a course or anything like that, right? Because it's actually not a free diving exercise that we're doing. However, as a coach, as a facilitator, coach, mentor, whatever you want to call me, a lot of the work that we do, that I do, is often just removing a lot of the self-doubt from people, right? And replacing that with the belief again. That's kind of what it comes down to. And there's a number of ways that you can do that. And I like to give people, obviously, the knowledge about it, like to frame it with as much science and as much research and a lot of experience as possible. And then allowing the person or the people to do that in a practical way, right? And to experience it themselves. And it's really funny, and it's very interesting always when you ask people to do breath holding, because we do this exercise where I ask people at the start, I say, hey, who can hold their breath for 30 seconds? And like some people kind of, yeah, maybe I can. Who can hold their breath for 1 minute? Almost half the people won't put their hand up after that, and a few tentative hands go up. Anyone who can go more than 1 minute, and then like you might get one or two kind of confident, or people, maybe they can actually do that anyway, but no, and then anyone further, and no one will say. And so there we go. We go through the breath work, the sort of like, in a way, like the guided version, a self-guided version first, where people can just experience it, and then I add a little bit of coaching and guidance and this kind of thing, keeping the time the whole way. And round after round, if you do 3 or 4 rounds of this, first of all, it's kind of like you see people that, we understand it's a scary thing. In my book, I call it microdosing death in some way, because you're literally, like, your body's kind of like giving you every single urge. Hey, you might want to breathe soon, or the diaphragm's like bumping around, bouncing around, like it's trying to escape in a way. Hey, remember, I've got to do something. And then by the 3rd round, we have like for example, a 50-year-old lady who has never done any practice before, reaching 3 minutes 30, and she's like completely amazed that it's even possible. And it's the ultimate. The why I like it so much is it's the ultimate. We talk, like, I feel like it's already, this conversation's already gone into this body-mind connection. I keep somehow mentioning this. This is not something I'm like forever talking about. Of course, I mention it, but it just seems like a theme today. It's just popping up. But it definitely feels like in yourself you have this mastery, or you have this potential inside where you're like, you know what, I'm a little bit in control here. I know what should be happening right now, but I want to be right here. I don't want to breathe just yet. Yes, I can feel you, diaphragm. You're trying to do, you're giving me the signal that it's time. But actually, if I soften and I just like kind of surrender into it, there's more in there. By the way, each round I'm asking people, hey, is there more in there? Everyone's saying yes. I'm like, okay, if there's more in there, let's do another round. So we kind of building this momentum. And by the end of it, everyone's gone from like their number, what they believe they could do, is like way down here. Their actual numbers like at least double. And then all of a sudden you've reinstalled this, especially when you're talking about like diving under the ice, or improving your Wim Hof method practice, or you're in yoga, it's like Kumbhaka and these kind of things. You're giving someone a lot of possibility there. So I think and then we haven't even touched on the idea. It's like, when you're like the CO2.
That's what came to mind when you first said this, actually.
Oxygen delivery, possibly, lots of studies about the spleen and the splenic contraction, and pumping the most healthiest, highest, like highest amount of oxygen in the blood coming straight from the bone marrow that gets pumped through the body. EPO, the hormone EPO, which signals this inside the body. That's when we talk about Lance Armstrong and all the Tour de France guys that got busted and haven't got busted. So a lot of those things are coming from the from the breath holding, right? There's even studies that show, and Oxygen Advantage has been talking about it before and everything like this, where you do the breath holding before you go and do the cardiovascular exercise, repeatable sprint training. There's a study that shows that people that have one group, control group, just did the sprints. The other group did the breath holds before, and they were like, they were improving out of sight. They had more in the tank. So breath holds as a warm up is we can talk about as well in some ways. So lots of potential there, but then also what we're really talking about here is it's an acute burst of stress, right? Again, circling back to getting out of bed in the morning. It's if you really listen to the signal, the first true moment that you're in a breath hold, that your body's saying, hey, breathe, then there you are, stuck at 40 seconds or whatever. So you kind of delay that. You say that I have the control, you have the connection inside, you soften your body, you're surrendering yourself, you're trusting yourself, and all of a sudden you make it to 3 minutes 30 and you're like, okay, bring it on. What's next? It gives so much.
I'm dead curious though. What, from your point of view, what is it with the people at the beginning when you present them the idea of they're going to hold their breath, and the ones that are a little bit unsure of how long they can do, but then you've got the super confident ones that perhaps think they can do a minute or plus. What do you think's going through their mind at that point? Just from your point of view, I'm sure you find it dead fascinating when you're with these individuals and you're facilitating these.
It's one of my favorite exercises. It gives me a lot of data. It gives me a lot of information about the people, right? You get to learn what they're like under, can they be coached? Are they teachable in a sense? Will they receive the information? Can they real time hear what you're saying? Because I'm like saying, hey, soften the body, relax. Mm-hmm. Can they receive that? Can they put it into practice despite all of this, the brain and everything saying, hey, maybe we should breathe again soon, whatever. And then who are the ones honestly, I think a lot of the sort of, like when you're doing this in a group environment, I think the competitive nature of that can work against some people. People like rather have their own practice and not be judged, and we have been a little bit, I don't know, we're always comparing ourselves, and the old saying, like, comparison is the killer of all joy in anything we do, in a sense. So we try and do it. I try and do that in a way where, like, people don't have to see. Everyone's laying down. I'm just reading out the times, so they don't have to worry about who's done what. They just know the numbers. So there may be, in actual fact, they're just really competing with themselves in a sense, or just trying to gently stretch their own elastic band a little bit further. So, but of course, in a way, at that point, in a sort of like a cold exposure / ice diving retreat, people are very much attaching that to the end event, which is the ice dive itself. So people are trying to be like, do I have enough time? And all this, So
I suppose that was going through people's minds, right? When you.
Yeah. And that's why, like I don't play any music or anything like that. Like, I'm not trying to play any music and give people this artificial relaxation or anything, like it's obviously very useful music, and I'm using it all the time. But in this exercise, I want to make it as relatable and transferable to the act of calming the breath and then doing a breath hold and going under the ice, right? As much as possible, not to sort of like pump it up and with all this, things that won't be there on the day of the dive. Bear in mind, we're asking people that they just tow a line on 10 meters underwater, which may last 15 seconds for most people. So when they understand that you can hold they're breaking, first of all, they're breaking through the 1 minute barrier, then they break through the 2 minute. They're all of a sudden like, okay, tick, I don't have to worry about how long I can hold my breath anymore, right? And in a way, like that's really, really transferable to, like I said, all the other breathing practices, your cardio at the gym, maybe even the cold exposure in some ways, depending on how people are doing it. Just knowing that, like, once, like when you come out of a breath hold, I've even pinpointed that first breath out of the breath hold. Of course, when people are really going into a lengthy breath hold, of course, it's not so, you're just like, okay, I'm out. Okay, done, sort of thing. But in the book, I pinpoint that moment. Like, it's like, can you take that one breath out of the breath hold and sort of like, can you like focus all of your sort of like awareness towards that one breath and like allow that to be a rebirth of sorts, and to really kind of connect with that. Like, it's like the wonder of breath, because you've just gone like 2-3 minutes or whatever it is without the breath, and then you breathe again, and that feeling of, and that rush inside the body is something to behold as well. And like
almost
guiding, just being really thankful for like, and just feeling the kind of like literally the life come back into you again, you know, and this sort of like energy coming back into you on a biological level, and maybe the spiritual level too.
Nicely put. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, right? Because it is a very primal thing. When you in sports, all the fighting, the boxing and the UFC and all this mixed martial arts, someone's literally trying to choke you, right? They're literally trying to take air away. So how important is CO2 tolerance, working under a big load? And then there's going to be times where someone has a tight squeeze on you and they're really around you, where it's going to be beneficial to relax and just focus on the hand postures and moving the arm away or rolling in the right direction, or you know there's so much value that you can give somebody for being calm and cool,
being comfortable in uncomfortable situations.
Exactly that. It's transferable, like into these stressful lives that we're living. It's very, very transferable.
You keep mentioning the book. For those that are listening, the book title, sorry, Leigh?
Re-Spiritual Awakening. So, it's a play on the words, right? So when you it's a lot about the words, and there's lots of science books about breathing out there. So I didn't dare challenge those or go head to head with those or anything. It was just more of a freedom of expression book. But like, the respiratory system is the respiratory system. Respire means breathe again. And it's really about like the awakening. Respiratory awakening is like really just being aware and awake to the breath again, and giving it meaning. Like I really liked how you just before you said, like when we're talking about this first breath out of a breath hold, that you went to the grateful and gratitude thing, because it's not a given. It's not for, we shouldn't take it for granted that the next breath is for certain.
It's autonomous, right?
Yeah. And we have the possibility always. We have the possibility to drive the meat bag, the body around, however we want to do it in this life, right? Otherwise, we are in the passenger seat. If it's autonomous, it's like the Tesla that's also self-driving or whatever. It's just going to take
quite a bit
the destination. And we get the nice car, and we want to see what this baby's got under the hood. So yeah, breathe the way you want to live is kind of like the mantra of the book.
Nice. And that kind of leads nicely into the next question, especially for those that perhaps are on the fence, or perhaps, as you quite rightly mentioned at the beginning, you didn't know how to meditate, right? You didn't know how until you started to practice and understand it yourself. But if you had to design or give advice to someone who wanted something that was very minimal, a minimal effective dose, you talk about biohacking previously, a cold and breath protocol for someone busy in I'm going to say Dubai because that's where we're located, what would it look like? This busy professional who perhaps is under the impression that they don't have time for this stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of easy in a way. The first thing is, like, I think you've been talking about as well, this awareness. Like if you're talking about breathing, just to be able to kind of, in a way, observe yourself and observe your own breathing. Now I just jump into maybe a scene or a situation in Dubai. You go to a business meeting. It's very important. You're a bit nervous before you go in, and you're sweating, and you're like, and you find yourself breathing up in here. The first thing that we do anyway is like if you walk out on a stage or in any, or you're taking the free throws in the basketball game or whatever it is, You breathe, right? You breathe and calm
anyway.
yourself so that you can focus on the thing, the goal, the what you're trying to do, right? To convey your pitch, your sales pitch or whatever in a good way or a meaningful way, and give the impression you know what you're doing, right? So why we wait till that moment? Why can't, like, we should be doing this all the time. We should be just doing this in a constant way. And like my sort of philosophy on all these things is like, someone might call that a balancing act, right? You're like, okay, now I feel like people don't really seem to care about breathing until it's too late. The event has already happened. The sort of like proverbial shit's hit the fan or whatever you want to say, right? It's like, okay, now I can't breathe. Now what have I got to do again? How do I get it back? They've gone too hard in the cardio and they're like off the treadmill, blowing a gasket or whatever over in the corner. Or it's like, the woman comes up and asks you out and you're like, you can't answer her or whatever it is. Or, any of these situations, you're not interested about breathing until it's too late, until the thing's already happened, right? So how to go out in front of it and get out instead of like rehab, which is like after the event, it's kind of like the prehab. Mm-hmm. How do you shape the breath resilient to and understand that the breath is absolutely, so if you breathe slower, if you breathe less, then you're going to be more focused. You have more bandwidth and more possibility to be present, right? And the opposite is the same as well. So when you want to get going, when you want to ramp things up and you want to do the incline on the treadmill, you're going to be ready to be breathing some more, Mm-hmm. And of course, then, like it's just all about breath awareness. The number one thing is breath awareness, so that that the brake, we used the car analogy a minute ago, and if we're stepping out from the autonomous breath and we really want to drive the thing, the exhale is the brake. It's as simple as that. The longer you take the exhale, the more you have your foot on the brake. And nice. The inhale is sort of like the gas pedal. That's the active part on the breath. In the hospital, beep, it goes up and it goes down. It's because it's the inhale is raising. It's the active part of the body. It's kind of like ramping the heart rate up, and then the exhale is down. Beep, 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 like this. So again, we apply that real time. Now, the skill in all of this, if you don't do it real time, then your body will self-correct. It will happen autonomously anyway, which is explaining burnout, for example. You got people that are living these very stressful lives. And, if you look at a burnout, it's a self-balancing act anyway. Mm-hmm. You've been operating in this level where you've been going. And now your body's saying, okay, now you're not going to do anything, or you can't do anything, right? You can't get off the couch. You don't have the energy to do the things or whatever it is. So in a way, that's still a balancing act. That might be 2 years, that balancing act. It's a self-correcting balancing act that is 2 years of you going, and then 1 year of you not being able to get off the couch or whatever it is. We don't want that. We want to do a whole bunch of stuff in that and do it with good meaning and good purpose in presumably in those 3 years. How about we have the self-balancing act just going as real time as possible, making those micro adjustments, and it comes from the awareness, right? So that's the like the most fundamental thing possible. And I know a lot of people that see or listen to this will probably be like, okay, like what's the protocol? Give me the numbers. What's the But like if someone really wants the numbers or that protocol, anytime you feel stressed, just breathe in through your nose and then try your best to do an 8-second exhale through the lips, pushing like you're blowing through a straw. Simple as that. And if it still feels like, we're naturally doing these things anyway, right? Like if someone in a meeting is disagreeing with you, what do? They usually like,
true,
they're naturally self-regulating. It's sighing. They're kind of like trying to down regulate themselves because they're like, something's rising in them. There's like, I don't agree with those numbers or those figures on your slide presentation or whatever. So you can start to see people doing that autonomously anyway. So why don't we just do it beforehand? Why don't we just like take it and be like, okay, listen, and then turn it around, and all of a sudden, one breath, you feel a lot different. You can do it again. You can breathe in and you repeat it. And then all of a sudden, if you do that for like 1 or 2 minutes, you have this new, like the eyes are different, you know, you look different, and you're like, okay. And you know what? We live in a world where if someone actually did that in the middle of a meeting, it's okay. You know, like people wouldn't be like, oh, here he goes again, breathing, or what. Like, in many places, places I go in the university or whatever here, people will probably join you on that. They'd be like, oh yeah, let's do some breathing. So that's the number one thing. And like, this is the boring thing, right? I'm now talking about, you said Dubai. I don't know anything about what the water is like in the taps there. I'm probably assuming it's not below 15 degrees. The cold shower is without doubt the sort of the go-to thing. It's the most accessible. But I don't know, Dubai, I think from what I understand, there's lots of places that have like the ice baths there and the cold plunges around, you know, some of these health places, quite nice looking, fancy ones too, to be honest. I mean, that's the one that's going to give you the most value, in my opinion. If you can do it once a week, if it's a stretch to do a cold shower, or it doesn't feel that cold or whatever, it might be a subjective thing. It might actually still feel cold, even though if the temperature's warm. Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, at least finish the shower off cold. That's the first touch point, right? If you can, you know, wash up, do your thing. If you want to finish the shower cold for 30 seconds or something like that, and then eventually you can have the whole shower cold, no worries. Of course, that'll teach you the breathing as well. The same breathing that I mentioned before, where you kind of lengthen the exhales, very applicable in the cold shower and in the ice bath as well. But if you can get to the ice bath once a week, 2 or 3 minutes, it's a high value to you and your body.
Nice. And the question I've been looking forward to most is, you mentioned it a few times, the swim under ice. The website invites people to join the 1% who dare to dive and swim under ice. For someone who only has access to an ice bath and is considering joining one of your retreats, how would you recommend they begin training or expose themselves to this more often or frequently? And what kind of mindset, breathwork, and cold exposure practices would help them prepare for such an experience? I know I've asked you this personally myself.
Well, in a sense, like you know, so when you read it off the 1% or whatever, if you actually think about this world and this planet, how many people that live on here, 8 billion plus, how many, what percentage wise, are actually doing that? So that's kind of like the first point is like, does that excite you? Does that get you like, okay, that's kind of cool. Like I might like to be one of those people, right? And then, like, you know, what I'm finding is a lot of people that want to do this are actually coaches themselves, right? They see it as a way to validate and show their clients that they can practice what they preach. The mindset coach, the mentor, the whoever. Hey, I've never done an ice bath, ice dive before. Sorry, I've done some cold plunges or whatever, but like, this is a challenge for me too. I'm up for it. So sometimes they even bring a client or two with them and they do it together. But having said that, there are definitely people that come and they have actually like very minimal experience. There's very few people. I think we've had like maybe 5% of people have ever kind of done any free diving before. There's been people that have not been able to swim.
Okay, yeah.
Like there's been people that like got a little bit worried. It's like, can I touch the bottom? You know, when we're doing this cold plunge practice beforehand, and ultimately they don't need to swim because as long as they just pull on the rope, they just make it through from one hole to another. Like I said, there's people that couldn't believe that they would do a 3-minute 30 breath hold and said I think I might be able to push through it 30 seconds out. So many of those things are very the breath holding is very applicable. The sort of meditation or the sort of like relaxation practices that most people, I think, nowadays that are health conscious or aware of these things are kind of managing or practicing on some level, whether it be yoga, whether it be breath work, whether it be actual meditation, or just listening to a mantra or some sort of story, whatever it is, with the headphones, and just breathing or relaxing as they go to sleep at night. They are benefits. But if somebody really wanted to utilize the experience, as a sort of performance thing, well, the breath holding, learning how to do the breath holding and becoming more familiar with that. Not in the water, of course. No breath holding in the water, but just laying on the floor at home or in bed at home and practicing that. That's very useful. Practicing the cold, starting with the cold showers, doing some like sort of multiple entry to the cold. That's one thing actually that I could definitely touch on or mention a little bit more. A lot of people get so cozy and familiar with doing a 2 to 3 minute ice bath, and we don't spend you're not going to dive for 2 or 3 minutes under the water. We do in the retreat in that weekend. We practice a lot of stuff. Like I'm joking. I'm like, hey, trust me, guys. You come here. The last thing you're going to be thinking of is that you're too cold in this. You absolutely don't feel cold when you're under the water. Your whole body is sort of like built to withstand that, and just sort of like it has a lot of things working in your favor when you do that. So you're not going to be feeling cold in the water. It's more that when you come out and you're waiting, and then maybe you're going to do another dive, that's when you might feel a little bit of shakes creep in or something like that. So can we give the people, someone who wants to come or interested to train, it's like, okay, can you do a 1 minute ice bath and then come out and stay for 2 minutes and then go back in again? How about that? Instead of the standard 2 minutes that you do on a weekly basis, can you give yourself this little deviation away from that, and then sort of go in 1 minute, coming out, let the body reacclimatize a little bit, and then just when it feels kind of, okay, that was done, good job, we go back in again. That's very applicable, and that's very transferable towards the ice dive itself.
Nice. I imagine that some people would have a fear of being under the ice as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's like everyone who comes has the highest order of respect, and that's what keeps me engaged in doing these things, is because I see that people have the same nervous excitement. I see that people are kind of like, it means something to them, and I can always reflect to the first time I did it, and the feelings that I experienced as well, and I love to be there for that. And what's something I'm quite frequently saying is that you don't get to see. There's nothing that I'm coaching or doing other than this, where you can literally see in 15 seconds, you see someone go in as one person and exit as another. You can see that their lives are different. You can see that they have self-belief. You can see that they did something that meant a lot. And in many cases, not all cases, but you can see that there's at least, if it's not a full breakthrough, you can see that a layer or two have been kind of shed from that, And a lot of that is because of the fear factor of it, in a way, the fear of the unknown. I totally get it. As you stand there, as you sit there, you've got this mask on. A lot of people have never had a mask on before, and it covers your nose. So you actually have to breathe through your mouth. Otherwise you're going to fog up unless you've done some snorkeling or some free diving in wherever else in the world. I mean, that's a new thing for people. And the breath holding thing is scary for some people, not being able to feel that you can breathe. Going in, when you look down, it looks quite dark in the water, but then when you're facing the ice upwards, it looks super bright and light because the sun or the light is coming down through the ice. So when you look down initially, you can feel like, oh man, that's what is that down there? That's dark? Am I going to be lost in the dark? Until you go in and you're like, okay, it's light. So that's a scary thing for someone. Of course, there's a claustrophobic aspect. You're going under the ice. There's we make the holes pretty big, but to fit a few people in there, there's free safety divers and whatever. But one way in, and one way out in a sense, right? So that's a fear factor for some people too. And then the cold as well, right? It's the cold thing for some people, that until they come there, maybe they've done the 2-3 minute ice bath, they're like, yep, I got that, but it might be more if so. There's many of those things that are like packaged up into this very, very sort of acute sort of ball of, it's a tight ball of stress in a way, but they're quite small bursts of stress in a sense, because it's like 15 seconds long, unless someone has 2 or 3 dives and they're taking longer and they're enjoying it and they're getting more comfortable with it. That brings us all back to the moment that you're about to get in, and it's all about the calming yourself and breathing and trusting the breath and relaxing your whole body and being like, okay. And then also you can say whatever you want about like an ice dive versus a this versus a that, but it is kind of the same as everything else that we do in life anyway. Whether you want to go up to that beautiful looking girl, or and give and have a, drop a line, or say, hey, would you like a coffee or whatever, or you step up before the audience or whatever it is, you still have to take the plunge. You still have to commit to doing the thing, and you still have to, like, I can't make someone do it. I can't be there and like pull someone through. It's up to the individual. So they just know, like I think part of it is the sort of like the solid pat on the back that someone gives themselves mentally after, when they're like, I bloody well did that. I did that, and it's just such a thing. Like, it's like, man, all those things packaged up, all the thoughts, all the mind is a crazy thing. It has all the scenarios. And by the way, like, the mind is never sort of like the first thought when you're thinking about, hey, I'm going to do a nice dive. It's not like, hey, I'm going to go through and it's going to go so well and it's going to feel great after, like, people are not necessarily like focused on that. It's all the other millions of things that are make believe in the mind, in a sense. Right. So, that's like you said, it is, there's the fear factor. And conquering the fears, like I said earlier, those things that
it's a bundle of, it's like one shot of everything that you can imagine that's not so good, and one way to overcome it all in one shot is to do a nice dive. It sounds
that's one way. That's one way. And it's like I said, it's if the person can do that with that kind of like, there's no pressure at all. At any time, anyone can say, hey, no, I'm good, like, even though you pay the money and you come all the way here to Finland, well, I'm good. And in fact, that's happened one time. It's happened. Somebody said, hey, listen, this has been an incredible weekend, and I never thought I could hold my breath this long, and I never knew that I could stay in the cold that long, and I never knew this, and that was amazing, and this. But you know what? I'm so full right now that I'm like kind of happy, but also a little bit tired, and like I'm good with what we've got. And I'm like, awesome,
nice.
Perfect, great choice. Just back yourself. That's the thing. Back yourself.
No, and I think that's a very important note to finish on. Just back yourself. Thank you, Leigh. For those that would like to follow and know more, and perhaps take an interest in doing the ice dive retreat, I believe it's March. And what time of year is this for you usually?
Oh, mate, we get going in January. So we just finished up the season, and everything's like just melted now. So we gear up for the next season. Now I almost exclusively focus on all the breathing things and all that sort of stuff. But we start the season up in January, February, March, basically.
Nice. So for those that want to know more, or at least claim an early spot, where can they find out more about yourself?
LeighEwin.com. Everything's been packaged up into the one website, and that's the way. Like I said, I've planned to do five next year. So
wow.
And one of them's already full. So
okay.
Welcome.
No, it's on my bucket list, and I'm hoping to get a few of our clients there. And perhaps before I jumped on this call, I was thinking, similar to what we've been speaking about today, it's one of those things we just got to do it.
And like we've mentioned before, like there's a few people that reach out and contact and say, hey, like, can we do it? And of course, like I'm super open. Like if you have a small group of people that you can get along, we can do it.
That's what I'm thinking.
We can get
That's
you
what-
involved.
That's what's been on
Yeah.
mind. Is actually we get a few of our clients to come together.
Yeah, no probs. Like I said, the one that's already booked is exactly that. Is actually quite well-known Wim Hof instructors and a few other investment banker and guys that they're like this kind of, these, and one very famous, well-known Bitcoin, blah blah blah. These guys are they're constantly traveling around the world and just doing these experiential things, and they are kind of a team in a sense. So, and every now and then they bring someone else, unsuspecting victim,
Yeah.
someone in. It's like, hey, you want to try this? Yeah, okay. And then we've got them. So yeah, definitely open to those things.
Okay.
And if you have people that are interested, we can make a deal or something like that. Or even if you get a few 3-4 people on, we can make some sort of deal or whatever. So
Yeah, let me think about this actually. I can make a
Yeah.
very good piece of stuff out of this. Leigh, thank you very much. I've gone well over your time.
pleasure,
I do
man.
apologize.
No, it's honestly, it's no worries. Like the biggest problem I have is like getting me there in the first place. And once I'm here, I'm good. You know what I mean? It's just with all that's going on now, especially I'm also, I'm super how do I say it? Like, I don't want to say selfish, but I'm like really focused with the things that I'm doing. So also there's one other guy with a podcast at the moment who's like, I'm like, hey, you can't jump the line. I've got Joe here, been waiting a while. So yeah. And also I knew that this week was pretty up until just a couple of hours ago. I'd been like flat chat, getting everything done at the university and everything like this, and so that I can also have this a little bit extended time away from to spend more time in the house, and also doing this mentor thing too. So just getting all that up and ready, doing the for coaches, people that want to learn about very, very practical and very functional breathing things into their coaching. So that's
that'll be on your website as well.
Yeah. It's got a drop down menu. There's like a waiting list or whatever. So I've got several people that are sort of like, come on, I'm waiting. I want to learn. So piece by piece.
Good.
Balancing act. Like I said before, it's a constant balancing act, trying to get everything done. There's so many amazing things to do. And things that bring me a lot of joy, but this house is like this house. Honestly, the house was a very big. How would I say it? It surprised me. It surprised me how much I live a very full life, and I pack a lot of things into my day anyway. And to be fair, there's been a few days where I've been like a bit trashed from the whole thing. Like man, I got to take like a couple of days off from I can't keep going like this otherwise. Gym suffering. I can't do what I need to do because carrying like concrete around or whatever. So, but eventually this is a big project here. Eventually this will become like at least a possibility to host retreats here.
I was going to say, is that what you're planning?
Yeah. So it's, I'm talking with the sauna companies where we get the sauna outside. There's a very, very tiny pond here that we're going to dig out a little bit more when we dig the trenches. The last thing before the guy leaves with the tractor is going to dig me out the pond. So we've got this very picturesque place where we can guide and teach people from online and stuff. And downstairs here is like a yoga kind of studio and we're going to be able to bed quite many people here as well, at least 10 people here, I would say, and then
nice,
all that jazz. So yeah, full project here.
I'll be following for sure. All right, Leigh, thank you very much, and
thanks, mate. Appreciate it.